interesting set of scriptures that we have. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 32 through 34. We know as Paul has talked about certain things in the church at Corinth, and he has dealt with following after certain preachers, he would say, or dealing with sin in the congregation. We talked about what about our relationship with God, eating of meat or not eating the meat, and things that offend or not offend or such. But here in particular, he's talking about, well, what about being single or married? And what about this? And people were talking about, well, enough of an issue that Paul deals with it and saying that, well, what about being single or being married and being a Christian and serving God? What is God's plan? Is it God's plan that we be single? Is it God's plan that I marry? What does the Bible say about this and such? Now, I know I am married. Well, let me rephrase that. I know I am happily married. Right? I know that. I know it's wonderful. I knew when I was single. And I knew when I was married. And there's something that took place that I didn't have to wonder about, well, I'm single now, and I wonder if I'm married or not. No, I knew when I got married. It was very definite. I knew when I was single. When I was single, my spice cabinet looked like this, salt and pepper. That's all I had. That's all you got to worry about, being single, just salt and pepper. I got married, my spice cabinet looked like this, right? Something like that, all kinds of things, things change when you get married. Another thing, when I was single, my salary and her salary was, we make $1,200 a month. She made $800 a month. And when I got married, things happened like this. My salary went to zero. She got a big raise. Julie said, and this is the way it's been, and this is the way it's always going to be, that what you make is ours and what I make is mine. And it works out fine like that. And I knew when I was single that I looked like this. I was a big, strong, and I got married. I still mean and green. I just look like that now. And things change when you get married. But what about being married and what about being single? And can you serve God when you're single? I found this to be an interesting statistic. Look at this up here. It said 104 million unmarried adults in the United States. Almost as many over the age of 18 are unmarried, single, as being married. Now, single does not mean they were never married. Could be that speaking of those whose spouses died and they're single again, but it's talking about those who were married over the age of 18, married 56%, 44% single, unmarried at this time. I think in the church here at Hampton, we would probably run pretty close around these statistics. That people are saying now, can I serve God when I'm single? And it's different than serving God when you're married. And Paul does say it is different. It is different. It's not a right or wrong of one or the other, but it is different. Can I serve God when I'm married? Can I serve God when I'm single? And when he talks about single, and sometimes it is that we get the idea of being single, especially for those who are unmarried, have never married, that it seems to be that three things that we'll talk about just briefly. It seems to be, if you've never married, that you have come to believe, maybe it's our fault or the church fault, society's fault or whatever, that marriage is the only God-ordained lifestyle. Marriage is not the only God-ordained lifestyle. Paul has said while you're single, there's a lot of advantages in being single and serving God. Now, he's not talking about that he's not against marriage, but he's saying that there is a place for being single and serving God. And in fact, he's saying you can be more devoted in serving God as a single. You care for the things of the Lord. Sometimes we think that as being single and never married, the grass is always greener on the matrimonial side. Everyone who's married, boy, their life is just wonderful. In that grass is always greener there. If only I were married, the grass would be green. My life would be better. Number 3, you would say that, well, if I were married, I wouldn't be lonely. I would be happy if I were married. And sometimes it is, as those who are single, who are never married, would fall into these wonderings. I wonder, should I get married? Should not? I would say this. You give this warning, I would say. Observation, I would say. Don't get married just for the sake of getting married. There's a lot more into marriage than that. But he's talking about serving God as one who is married, serving God as one who is single. In fact, he would say the single advantage, he mentioned several things here. Look in 1 Corinthians 7, verse 26. He said there's fewer pressures when you're single than when you are married. And those who are married understand this, that your pressures increase. You care for the things of your family. That's what Paul is saying when you're single versus married. He said there are fewer problems. In verse 28, he would say, 1 Corinthians 7, as one who is single, as one who is married. The one who is single cares for the things of them and cares for the things of the Lord. There are a lot more problems because you have a lot more people to take care of, being married, having children and such, and one thing or another. That's just the way it is. Fewer preoccupations, verse 32, he would say. There's a definite advantage in being single. According to these specifically. Now on the other side, speaking with the singles, and then on the other side, speaking to those who are married, Paul is not against marriage. I don't want you to read 1 Corinthians 7, verses 32 through 34 and say, well, Paul is all for being single and not for being married. In fact, he kind of says, now, being single, you care for the things which are the Lord. Being married, you care for the things which are your family and not for the things of the Lord. Now, caring for things of the family is taking care of things which are the Lord's also. If a man not provide not for his family, he's worse than an infidel, Peter would say. Taking care of your family, taking care of your wife, taking care of your children is doing the work of the Lord. He's not against marriage. He's not for pro being single and the con against marriage. He's just saying there are advantages. It's different. There's no right or wrong with it. It's different. Being single and being married. Sometimes we look at marriage and we think of these things, these, I would say, myths about marriage, that those who are unmarried may look at marriages and say, well, these who are married never have any problems. I see them every Sunday. They come here, they're wonderful. They love each other, care for one another. You never hear a harsh word between them. And let me remind you, you are seeing people when they come to church. And they're good when they come to church. You're not seeing them on Monday. You're not seeing them on Friday. You're seeing them when they come to church. And they just love one another and care for one another and have everything right coming to church. And you think their marriage is just perfect and wonderful and they don't have any problems. And every marriage does. You may think, well, they never get angry with one another. They just speak as kind words and that they are just married to perfect people. Now, no, we're not married to perfect people, except me. Got that in there. No, we're not married to perfect people. We're not perfect. No one is. There are myths about marriage. And you may say, well, the grass is always greener if only I were married. But marriage is wonderful. Marriage is God ordained. two institutions which are God ordained. The church is one. It is in God's plan that the church, be here. We are part of the church because God said it's our plan. The other is marriage. God's plan for marriage. And so it is with God's plan there. And we don't have perfect marriages. We're not perfect people. But there are advantages to being married also. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 said, two are better than one. And he gave reasons for this and such, and that it is a wonderful thing being married and facing the problems in life, the joys in life, the tears in life, the laughters in life together and sharing with that. Two are better than one. He's not against marriage. He's just saying that one who is married does have decisions to make about time. One who is married has decisions to make with the family and taking care of the family and the church work that needs to be taken care of with that. But two are better than one. And when you're married, and if God blesses your marriage with children, it says Psalm 127, children are an heritage of the Lord. Are you listening? Children are a blessing from the Lord. Yeah, you hear those little crying ones out there? Children are a blessing from the Lord. You who have 2-year-olds and they're facing those terrible twos, just remind yourself, children are a blessing of the Lord. And you teenagers, you go home today and you go tell your parents, I am a blessing of the Lord. Yes. It's wonderful to have children and to raise children. And I guess most everyone here has perfect children. Or at least perfect grandchildren anyway. You got that. But there is a blessing in that. And it's good. But you do, in raising your children, you are torn between time and how to serve God and be with your kids. And people today, the kids are just seems like there's so many more activities that kids are involved in with school and sports, with band, and just extracurricular activities, a lot more than whenever I was raised. And parents are just here and there, and their time is taken. How do I deal with this? How do I bring up my children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord when that's our responsibility and we only have one shot with it? And how do I do this? And our parents raising their children, church, we need to lift them up in prayer. We need to encourage them. We need to help them. It's tough. Children are a blessing of the Lord. Ephesians 5:31, and I know that this Ephesians 5:31 says that a husband is to leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, but I put that you learn love and forgiveness in marriage because we're not perfect. And you learn to love someone who at some times in their life is unlovable. And you learn to forgive because we're not perfect. In dealing with those who are married and those who are unmarried, what is God's plan? Single? Married? Yes, is the answer. We could go through being single and being married, and we did very briefly here on this. Just touch some highlights with it. Someone once said, and it caught my attention, that no unmarried person will go to heaven. And I thought, what are you talking about? And he was talking about spiritually. That when we become the bride of Christ, we marry him when we make that decision. When we make the decision to become a Christian, we make the decision to become the bride of Christ. The church being the bride of Christ. And married to him. And committed to him. Our whole life long. Are you married? Serve Christ with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Are you single? Serve him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. It may be that your plans that you marry or not marry, but are you married to Christ? Have you become a Christian? Have you dedicated your life to serving the one who died for you? If not, why not? Why not make him the Lord of your life? Why not respond to the gospel invitation right now while we stand and while we sing?